Metaphors of movement in its current form began with two small incidents. One was me presenting up in Leeds. I was co-presenting a workshop with Nick Kemp. He was doing his stuff, I was doing my stuff, and we were basically showing a group of people, what do we do that we think makes us different to other people? Now, I was up on the stage, and I heard myself say a question to a group, and as soon as I said the question, I thought, oh, that's interesting, and it started a whole chain of thought. And in conjunction with all the other stuff that was happening around the same time was one of the contributing things to metaphors of movement. This was the question I asked people. If you look back in anger, or if you look back upon your life with a sense of shame, which shoulder do you look over? Do you look over the left shoulder or the right shoulder? And what's the qualitative difference in the experience when you construct it and you look over each shoulder? Does one feel more right than the other? And I thought, oh, that's interesting. Physiological metaphors. Now, around about the same time, I had a business consultant come and see me. She was a coach for a company that basically worked with people setting up businesses. And she wanted to go solo, which is interesting. So she came to see me because she wanted to go solo, but she's a business coach and consultant who works with people going solo. And she comes to see me. So I said, okay, what do you want from me? She said, well, I want to set up my business. I said, I get that, but what do you want from me? What do you think I'm going to do? She said, the thing is, I don't know how to take the first step. Oh, okay, now that is interesting. You don't know how to take the first step. So I said, okay, when you take the first step, I'm interested in what kind of step that is. So for example, I said, stand up, and she stood up. I said, I want you to come this direction, and when you take the first step, notice, is it the left foot or the right foot that you put forward first? And she said, I don't think you really understand. I said, I do. Just humour me here. Take a step in this direction, left foot or right foot first. She said, I don't think you're listening to the structure of my problem, what I'm actually trying to tell you here. I don't know how to take the first step. I said, I know. Left foot, right foot, come this direction. Which one first? And then she said to me, you are Andy Austin, aren't you? I said, yes. Anyway, I kept going, come this way, take a step. The first step, left foot, right foot. This goes backwards and forwards, and she starts getting quite angry, to the point that she gets really angry. So I think, okay, is this what happens when she goes to take the first step, and that someone else has an expectation of her to take the first step? There's a weird thing. For those of you that have done your NLP course or your hypnotherapy course, you might have just gone along on the course to study the subject, to learn the subject. But there's an expectation set in the practitioner name, or even just in the paradigm of the interaction that people give, which is now you're supposed to start seeing clients. I've recently come back from a photography course. Now the interesting thing there was people kept saying to me, are you going to take the leap? I went, what leap? The leap to, becoming self-employed. I said, I am self-employed. Oh, what do you do? And I said, oh, I'm a therapist. No, but are you going to take the leap to start selling photography? No, I'm not going to sell my photography. As some of you will know, I do a lot of photography. It's a hobby. But apparently the expectation set is if you go and do a photography course, you're going to sell your... So I just wondered if this lady, the expectation is because she's a business consultant and coach, she should be self-employed, because that may well be that's in the pattern. You get what I mean here. So, left foot, right foot, which way? She gets angry. She said, I don't think you're listening to me. I said, do it. And she did the following. She took one great big step where she stepped so far, because she said, fine, I'll tell you, I'll show you. She went too far. It was a step too far. So I said, now take the second step, a follow-up step. And of course she can't, because she's gone too far. So for her, there was a complex equivalency in the situation that I'd created, which is taking the first step is a really big step. It's also a really big step that's accompanied with some difficult emotions to handle. It's also a step that precludes or makes very difficult any subsequent steps and follow-ups. So I said, okay, now I think we can get a good measure of the kind of step that you're thinking of making. Like those guys on the photography course. Are you going to make the leap? Are you going to take the plunge? Is what they kept. The plunge? Good Lord. I mean, a plunge doesn't sound very good. There's something about plunging that tells me this isn't good. And they say things like, I'm frightened or I'm nervous of taking the plunge. They should be. This is important. It's not a step they're taking, it's a plunge. She was taking a step too far. So these are the kind of things I started to play with, is the physiological thing of metaphor. So one of the early days, I got people to think about walking a tightrope. That classic thing where you walk a very fine line and it's like you're walking a tightrope. And I would get people to reenact it. So they would literally be standing, and you know you've got the experience structured in the body correctly because you feel like it. Not you're literally walking a tightrope, but you get that metaphorical experience, like say walking on eggshells, which was another thing I would do with people. When you're having to tread carefully because you're walking on eggshells around somebody, how do you walk? Now obviously it's a metaphor, but if I get people to physically enact it out, if they got the physiology correct, they will get the feeling of walking on eggshells as the feeling they get around the person they have to tread carefully around. So this was the kind of stuff we would do. If you take the first step, is it your left foot or right foot? What kind of step is that? If you step too far, how far is that? When you look back in anger or look back in shame, which way do you look back? And what changes when you go the other way? What about this? Something's out of reach. Now, I used to get people in workshops, I don't do this now, but I used to get people to go, okay, come on, anyone who's got an experience of something being out of reach, a goal, an outcome, something you want that's out of reach. Half the room would typically do this, and half the room would be doing this. There's a few variations in between, but generally, the majority of people were split fairly evenly between those two. Now, the solution for people, of course, is very different. The people doing this, think about it, why don't they move their feet? If it's out of reach, it means they've got to take some steps. They've got to move forwards. Now, of course, metaphorically, there might be something in the way. There might be an abyss or a void, or there might be an edge. There might be an obstacle. But for most people, there isn't. It's just that they haven't taken the steps to be able to reach the thing. It might be this. The thing itself moves away. So they are taking the steps, but the thing moves away from them. But the people like this need a lift up. They need a hand to... Or it's a high status thing because elevations are at status, therefore it's out of reach because they're not high enough, they're not up to that standard that's required. For some people, there'll be these things like a backward step, stepping back, stepping down, stepping up. Taking a step in the wrong direction, taking a step in the right direction. Again, it's given away, taking a step in the right direction, to the right. Taking a step back, stepping down, obviously, it's a loss of status going down. Backing up, as we go back and up, status increase. People don't like backing down, because backing down is both a retreat and status loss. Backing up is a retreat and status gain. So we can start to see different patterns in the biases that people have. Now, you can start to see this in the physiology people have. Look at how they stand. I've worked with people who will have their arms folded and their heels dug into the floor, and they'll be pushing back in the chair. And they'll say things like, I'm just not able to move forwards in my life. I'm not going anywhere. Or they'll do things like, I'm at standstill. Some people have one foot on another foot, and they're then leaning on that. So they're putting all the pressure on a foot, and they go, I can't take any steps anywhere. I don't seem to be making any progress. Well, they can't because they're squashing their feet in a way that they can't take any steps. Some people do this. In the metaphor elicitation, where we go, what's left, right, front, back, I go, what's to the left? They go, I don't know, as they look to the right. And they go, what's to the right in the metaphor? They go, I don't know, as they look to the left. The physiology gives it all away. So what I encourage people to do is to start working out all these physiological metaphors, and I'm going to stick some in the comment section below here, in the little blurb below the video, so you can see the kind of things that I'm talking about. And what I'm going to recommend you do is just see which ones of those you can relate to, and how do you do those in the body. Once you know how you map those through in the body, how do you embody the metaphor? What you can then start to do is how does that physiology affect your state, And how does that physiology affect your state, which affects your behavior in how you interact in the different situations that you have those experiences in? So what we're going to start to do, of course, is rather than just pay attention to the words, we're going to pay attention to the embodiment of the words and then see what awareness that takes us to. Just a little thought. Try it out. Stick your comments in the section below. I'll be interested to see what you experience.